Imagine being surprised by a phone call and hearing words that changed your life forever. A simple ring on your cell phone, a familiar voice on the other end, and suddenly, everything you believed to be safe and secure crumbles like a house of cards. I didn't know it, but that call would be the beginning of something I never could have imagined, something so impactful that, to this day, I wonder how I could have been so blind as to not see the signs sooner. Have you ever experienced this? That feeling of being completely out of control, as if the ground suddenly dropped out from under your feet? Well, that's exactly what happened to me. I was living my life, believing my family was all I had and all I needed. But the truth, oh, the truth, was quite different. When you think the people you trust most will be there for you, the pain of betrayal is never expected. And the worst part is, sometimes the very thing you love most can be the very thing that hurts you. It all started with a call from one of the most important people in my life, my daughter. I didn't know it at the time, but her words would be a turning point in my entire story. I was there, going about my quiet routine, never imagining that, in seconds, everything would change. Her voice was calm, but the words were a blow. "We're leaving tomorrow. Your mountain house and your car are already sold. Bye." I freeze. My heart races and my mind, for a second, goes into overdrive. What did she mean? How could someone you love do something like that? Stay with me until the end. You'll understand what happened next. You'll discover how this betrayal, this abandonment, made me rethink everything I knew about my daughter, my own life, and most importantly, what truly matters in a family. Could I have done something differently? Would I have noticed sooner the small clues that now seem so obvious? But most importantly, you'll see how this pain led me to discover something I never imagined, family secrets that had been kept under lock and key for years, and how they changed the way I see the world. When that connection happened, I had no idea I was about to be thrust down a painful yet liberating path. I knew I was about to face something not everyone has the courage to face. The reality behind the smiles, the secrets hidden in the shadows, and the truths life sometimes doesn't let us see until it's too late. But what happened next, you won't believe. Brace yourself, because what you're about to hear may surprise you, because, in the end, it wasn't just my life that changed. It was the lives of everyone around me. How can one person's choices affect an entire family? What happens when you're forced to face the truth, no matter how painful? All this, and more, lies ahead. But before we continue, have you ever thought about being in my shoes? How would you react if someone you love suddenly turned their back and made decisions without consulting you? What would you do? Because what you're about to hear next will make you rethink everything you know about trust, betrayal, and, of course, overcoming it. And this story, my friend, is far from over, so stay with me and follow what comes next. What happened after that call? Well, it will change the way you see many things, I promise. I stood there, staring at the phone as if somehow it would be undone. Did I get this right? I thought. But no, my daughter's words were etched in my mind, and there was no going back. I felt such a deep pain, I could barely breathe. How could this have happened? How could someone I loved so much, with whom I'd shared so many moments, treat me this way? But deep down, something inside me knew this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of a painful, yet revealing journey. And if I were to be honest, I had to find out what was truly behind this behavior. Why would my daughter do something so cruel, so unexpected? And that's where the story begins to unfold, with secrets, lies, and even a certain relief that came from where I least expected it. But before I continue, I want to know, have you ever been through something similar? Has someone you deeply trusted done something unexpected? Something that left you speechless? I know it's difficult, but what you're hearing so far isn't just my story. It could be yours too. So, if this topic resonates with you, leave a comment below with what has touched you most so far. Share your experience, your opinion, and what you feel after hearing this. It makes all the difference and helps us create a true community here, where everyone can support and learn from each other. And, if you haven't already, please like this video. Your like is more than a simple gesture. It helps me know that this content touches your heart, and also helps the video reach more people who, like you, can benefit from these stories and reflections. Because, at the end of the day, what matters is the exchange we've created here, right? And if you're feeling connected to this story, If you want to keep up with everything that's to come, be sure to subscribe to the channel. It's with your subscription that this channel will continue to grow and reach more people. And so, we'll be able to share even more stories like this, which make us think and feel so deeply. Now let me tell you what happened next. My name is Amelie, and despite my age, I'm sure I can still surprise you with stories that will touch your heart. I'm the kind of grandmother who loves to gather with her family and share memories from the past. The kind of grandmother who always has a story to tell when everyone is sitting around the table, laughing, getting emotional, and reminiscing about good times. But today, what I'm going to share with you isn't one of those funny or wisdom-filled stories. Today, I'm going to tell you something that, to this day, makes me cry every time I remember it. I always believed that family was all I needed to feel secure, to feel loved. I was always the person who dedicated herself completely to my children and grandchildren. I was that mother who was always there, willing to make sacrifices for love. Because after all, that's what a mother does, right? She gives herself completely, giving everything she has, without asking for anything in return. And believe me, that's the foundation of our story. I always thought that, in the end, my family's loyalty would be unshakable. I was wrong. I've always been the grandmother who loved to tell stories about my own parents and grandparents, about the lessons I've learned over time and how life, despite its difficulties, always has something to teach us. But this story is different. And it's precisely because it's so different, so painful, that I never imagined I'd ever have to tell it. I, who spent my life teaching my children what trust, loyalty, and unconditional love were, now had to learn, the hard way possible, that reality isn't always as simple as we imagine. That call, the call that changed everything, came from one of the people I loved most, my daughter. I can't tell you how much my heart raced in that moment. It wasn't just any call. I recognized her instantly, but the tone of her voice was distant, cold, as if the whole world had receded between us. I didn't know what she was about to say, but a strange feeling washed over me, as if something huge was about to happen. And it did. Her words hit me like a punch in the gut. "We're leaving tomorrow. Your mountain house and your car are already sold. Bye." You know, you're never truly ready to hear something like that. We never imagined that something as simple as a connection could change everything we believed to be right. And as much as my mind tries to defend itself and believe it was just a nightmare, the truth is that, at that moment, my heart knew the situation was much deeper than it seemed. How could my daughter do this to me? How could she, so coldly, make decisions for me, without consulting me, without even giving me an explanation? Worst of all, the pain came not just from surprise, but from a sense of betrayal. Because, in an instant, I realized something was happening behind the scenes, something I didn't know, something that had been hidden from me for years. As a mother, I'd always tried to be there, to care, to understand, and to be the person they could trust. But it seems that deep down, there were issues, secrets that I'd never been able to see. Now I know that things don't happen by chance. Sometimes life needs to shake us up, tear us from our comfort zone to show us a harsher yet transformative reality. And that's exactly what this experience did for me. It forced me to look at my family with new eyes, to question things I never would have imagined. Because the pain of betrayal is, without a doubt, one of the greatest lessons life can offer us. Over the years, I've always believed that family was my safe haven. I was convinced that nothing could separate us, but in that moment, everything changed. Not only did I lose trust in my daughter, but I also had to face the pain of discovering that, behind that facade of love and support, there was something much darker going on. And I couldn't have predicted this. When the truth begins to reveal itself, it comes with a tremendous weight, but also with a clarity that, in some way, liberates. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because what happened after that call was something I never could have imagined, something that led me down a path of pain, but also of great revelations. I learned, the hard way, that life isn't just about moments of joy and pleasure. There are also shadows we must face, and only then can we truly transform our view of the world and those around us. But before I continue, let me ask you, have you ever been through something like this? Have you ever had someone you cared deeply about, someone you considered unconditional, hurt you in a way you never imagined? If so, write down, "I'm on this journey too." I want to know what you think about all this and how you've dealt with similar situations. Let's talk, because together we can better understand these feelings that sometimes make us question everything. Now the story will continue, and you won't believe what comes next. I've always been very close to my children and grandchildren. We lived in the same city, exchanged ideas, shared the good times and the hard times. It was the kind of relationship you imagine when you think of family, full of laughter, small fights, and immense loyalty among everyone. I honestly believed my life was perfectly aligned with what life should be. Like many families, ours seemed solid, without any major surprises or challenges. I saw each of my children as an extension of myself, and my grandchildren were the reason I woke up every day with a smile on my face. Nothing in my life, until that moment, had made me think something could fall apart so suddenly. It was clear to me that trust was the foundation of everything. I trusted my daughter blindly. I always believed that when you have a family, you don't need anything else, because they are everything. They are the people you can count on. They are your shelter in times of storm. When you have children, you develop the idea that, in the end, your choices, your mistakes, and even your failures will be understood and forgiven, because family love must always prevail. I lived believing this, and I felt safe, knowing that my daughter and I were united by something unbreakable. In life's most difficult moments, my daughter and I have always been there for each other. She has been my companion in big decisions, in small joys, and even in the anxieties of everyday life. I thought that, after everything we'd been through together, all the conversations, all the moments of love and understanding, there was nothing that could separate us. The idea that someone in my own family could hurt me so directly and without warning seemed impossible. But, as you can imagine, I was about to be surprised. Life suddenly began to show me that not everything that seemed solid was in fact. Sometimes, the trust you place in another person can become a double-edged sword, and that's exactly what happened to me. I remember how my daughter and I would talk about the future. I always felt like she was with me, ready to take care of me whenever I needed her. After all, I'd been through so much with her. From the hardships of childhood to the ups and downs of adulthood, life seemed to have brought us even closer together. But deep down, there was something going on, something I perhaps chose not to see. Her attitude began to change. Gradually, I noticed a distance, but I convinced myself it was just a phase, that things would soon return to normal. Oh, how wrong I was. That connection was the trigger. Until then, life had been going well, as I said. But not everything is as it seems, and that became clear to me in that moment. When my daughter said those words, it was as if the ground had been ripped out from under my feet. How could she? How could she do this to me? How could someone who had shared so many moments with me simply make such radical, thoughtless decisions without even offering an explanation? And worst of all, the cold, distant tone, as if everything we'd experienced had been irrelevant. I'd heard of family ruptures, but I never imagined I'd experience one. I never imagined it would happen in my own home with someone I loved so much. When the pain arrived, it was intense, not because I hadn't expected to be betrayed one day, but because I believed our bond was strong enough to weather any storm. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because the pain of discovering the truth so abruptly wasn't the only impact. The feeling of loss, the emptiness that remained, was like an echo in my heart, reverberating every day. But also, there, in that moment of anguish, other revelations emerged that I could never have imagined. You begin to question yourself. Who are the people you really know? What happens when trust is broken? When the mask falls and you find yourself facing an unexpected abyss? Because what happened next made me understand that we're not always prepared for the secrets that are hidden around us, and that often it's the decisions we make, or don't make, that put us in situations that can change our lives forever. I know this story will touch you. I know that, in some way, you can recognize yourself here, can understand the pain of feeling betrayed, helpless, and, at the same time, the need to understand the reasons that led to this. And that's what I want to explore with you now. Every step of this journey was a discovery, a transformation, and I want to take you to the heart of this story. Because in the end, understanding the behind the scenes of our family life, the reasons for our decisions, can teach us much more about ourselves than we imagine. Comment below. That makes sense to me. I want to know if you've ever experienced something that made you question your trust in the people you loved most. It was an ordinary morning, like so many others. The sun was streaming through the window, the house was quiet, and I was there, making coffee, my mind far away, unable to imagine what was about to happen. The phone rang, and when I saw my daughter's name on the screen, a sigh of relief washed over me. I didn't think anything strange. In fact, I even imagined she wanted to talk about something simple, some small update on her daily life. But I was completely wrong. I didn't know that, at that moment, my life would turn upside down. The phone kept ringing, and after a second of hesitation, I answered. "Hi, honey. How are you?" I tried to start the conversation lightly, but I quickly realized something was different. Her voice, which normally conveyed confidence and warmth, now sounded strangely cold and distant. And before I could ask any questions, she blurted out the words that still echo in my head to this day. "We're leaving tomorrow. Your mountain house and car are already sold. Bye." I was completely paralyzed. I couldn't understand the words. The phrase was there, floating in the air, but it made no sense. What was she telling me? What did it all mean? What did my house mean? How could she have done this without even consulting me, without even giving me an explanation? I couldn't process it. The words kept repeating in my mind, like an endless loop, but I couldn't connect the ideas. And worst of all, bye? How does one say bye after dropping such a bombshell? I was stunned, trying to make sense of what I was hearing. I didn't know what to do. My heart raced, and in a second, all the certainties I'd had about my daughter, about my family, began to crumble. Something was very wrong, and I knew it, but I couldn't put my finger on it. I tried to call back, but I couldn't. The phone kept going to voicemail. What was happening? How could I be so blindsided by someone I'd always considered my partner, my companion? The impact was immense, and I found myself staring into an abyss. What do you do when you discover that the person you trusted most is capable of making such drastic, thoughtless decisions and leaving you behind without even an explanation? I couldn't stop thinking about how painful this was. It wasn't just the material loss, nor the sale of the house or the car. It was something much deeper. It was the feeling of being ripped from my own life, as if everything we'd built together, all the moments we'd shared, had become irrelevant. I felt unprotected, as if the ground had disappeared from beneath my feet. And in that moment, I realized that the trust I'd once held was gone. I was alone, facing something that not even my mind was ready to understand. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this topic, because, after that call, I found myself forced to look at everything that had happened in a completely different way. And the hardest part of all was beginning to realize that, often, life gives us signs we choose to ignore. Perhaps I closed my eyes to the small changes in my daughter, to the behaviors that deep down I knew weren't natural, but chose not to question. When trust begins to be broken, it's like a curtain being pulled back, revealing things you never wanted to see. And reality imposes itself so brutally that often you don't know where to begin rebuilding. The worst part, perhaps, was the silence. When you're ignored, when your attempts at communication are systematically rejected, you begin to realize that something much bigger is at play. Silence, in this case, was the greatest enemy, because it made everything seem even more real, more impossible to believe. And the impact of that, my God, was devastating. I looked at my life, and it seemed like everything I knew was crumbling without me being able to do anything to stop it. Now, as this pain settled in my heart, I began to realize it wasn't just about my daughter. It was about an entire family dynamic that had been built on trust, but which, at the right moment, revealed that nothing was truly safe. When the mask falls, when the secrets are revealed, there's no going back. I had to face the hidden truth, the one hidden within my beliefs, my expectations. And it wasn't easy. And this is where the great lesson comes in. Sometimes, when life pushes us into a difficult situation, it also gives us the opportunity to see what truly matters. I needed to go through this painful process to understand the importance of recognizing changes, the signs that emerge, and to understand that life isn't made of absolute certainties. What happened after that call changed my life, without a doubt. And it took much more than just time to recover from it all. But the journey didn't end there. It continued to challenge me in ways I never imagined. Comment below, I'm on this journey too. if you've ever experienced something that made you question your trust in those closest to you. Let's exchange ideas about how we overcome life's challenges, because I'm sure that together we can learn much more about what truly matters. I froze. Those words were still echoing in my mind, and for a moment, my body simply refused to react. My mind was in denial, trying to process what I had just heard. How could my house be sold? How could she have done this without even consulting me, without giving me an explanation? What would you do if you heard something like that? As a mother, as a grandmother, my mind was in shock. What was happening? How could my own daughter treat me this way, so coldly, as if everything we had experienced together had no meaning? I couldn't understand. I felt lost, unsure of what to do, and the pain of realizing I was being discarded like that was something I never imagined I could feel. The phone sat there, in my hand, and for a moment, I stood still, as if by not moving, by not responding, the situation could somehow be reversed. But of course, that didn't happen. Her words, those harsh words, were already etched in my memory, and there was no way to erase them. My heart racing, I quickly tried to call her back, searching for an explanation, something that might make me understand what was happening. But instead of receiving a response, I just heard the voicemail ring. Once, twice, 3 times. My attempts were ignored, as if I were unknown, as if I had no value whatsoever. It was as if I had disappeared from her life, as if I had never truly existed. That feeling of being ignored was devastating, because more than anything, I wanted answers. I wanted to know what was happening. Why was she acting like this? Why was she treating me this way, without compassion, without even a decent explanation? The pain of being rejected by someone you love is indescribable, and in that moment, I didn't know what to do with it. I tried to calm myself, take a deep breath, think clearly, but nothing seemed to make sense. I couldn't stop thinking about how much our relationship had been built on love and trust. How could all of that be discarded so brutally? Anger began to mix with pain, and then confusion overcame me. Had I done something wrong? Was there something I hadn't seen before, something she hadn't told me that had led me to this point? I began to question everything, from our simplest moments to the most important decisions we made as a family. And what was even more distressing, how could I, with all my life experience, with all my years of dedication, have been left so helpless, as if I no longer meant anything to the person I trusted most? That call not only shattered the trust I had in my daughter, but also my belief in what I thought was the foundation of my life, my family. When you place your trust in someone, especially your child, you believe nothing can break that bond. But when the unexpected happens, when you're forced to face the harsh reality, you realize that trust can sometimes be fragile. The pain of realizing this is something no one should experience, but sadly, it's something many of us, at some point in our lives, must face. It wasn't just the fact of being ignored, but the fact that the person I loved most had decided, without even a second thought, to remove me from her life. And all of this without even offering a plausible explanation, without a word of comfort, without a shred of compassion. Her silence was even more painful than the coldness of those words. And more than ever, the feeling of despair intensified. I knew something was very wrong, but I couldn't understand what. What had I done to deserve this? Had I not been a good mother, a good grandmother? Could it be that, try as I might, the hidden truth about our relationship was something I had never realized? I tried to recall any sign, any clue that might have alerted me to what was happening, but everything seemed so normal. Until that moment, until that phone call. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because what came next, what I discovered, changed my life in ways I couldn't have imagined. And this pain, this feeling of being left out, led me to an internal transformation that, while painful, also revealed things I never would have discovered otherwise. Life, somehow, forces us to look at the truth, and when that happens, you begin to understand that not everything we experience and believe to be true is actually what it seems. The journey to understand the inner workings of our family, the choices we make, and the impact of those decisions is long and full of revelations. Sometimes, the answers we seek are hidden in places we don't want to look, but it is precisely in these moments of confusion and despair that we are challenged to grow, evolve, and discover what truly matters. Comment below. This makes sense to me. if you've ever experienced a moment when trust was so abruptly broken. I want to hear your thoughts on all this because I'm sure that together we can better understand the paths life leads us on, even when we don't want to move on. As the story unfolded, I began to realize that not everything was as it seemed. What happened to me wasn't just a mistake, a misunderstanding. No, it was something much deeper, something I couldn't see at the time, but that, over time, revealed itself to me. It was a betrayal disguised as a choice my daughter made, a choice that changed our dynamic forever. And as this truth began to emerge, it was as if I were standing in front of a mirror, looking at a distorted version of what I'd always believed to be our relationship. At first, I thought her distancing herself from me was temporary, that perhaps she was going through a difficult time in her life, or perhaps it was simply a mother-daughter disagreement. But as the days passed and she continued to ignore me, something inside me began to break. And it was then that I began to realize it wasn't simply a difference of opinion. What I was experiencing was distrust, the pain of realizing that someone I trusted completely had decided to push me away without remorse, without a single glance of compassion. I began to relive the memories of everything I had done for her, every sacrifice I had made, every effort to be by her side, to help her overcome difficulties, to guide her in her choices, and it all seemed to have been thrown away. Those sleepless nights, the sincere conversations, the moments I had been there with all my love and dedication, it all seemed not to have been enough. And deep down, the pain didn't come from the loss of material possessions, the house, the car, but from the feeling that nothing I had done had been appreciated. That effort, that love, seemed to have been undone by a thoughtless decision, as if it were a quick, inconsiderate trade. The hardest part was realizing that, all that time, I'd been living a distorted reality, something that didn't fit with what I believed to be true. I'd dedicated so much of myself to my family, to my daughter, believing our connection was solid, unchanging. But the truth was, there were hidden things I couldn't see, and looking back, her actions, the small signs of distance, began to make sense. But how could I have been so blind? How had I not understood what was happening before? How had I not realized that somehow what I saw as dedication and unconditional love had become a burden to her, something she'd rather leave behind? The emotional impact was immense. The feeling of betrayal, of being ignored in such a profound way, was difficult to digest. I didn't know how to deal with it. I was taken by surprise, as if everything I believed I had built had crumbled in an instant. And the pain of realizing that my daughter, the person I had given my life to, didn't think twice before making such a radical decision, was one of the greatest difficulties I've ever faced. Worst of all was realizing that, throughout all of this, my trust in her was slowly eroded, without my knowing it. Each time she pulled away, each time her excuses became more flimsy, I thought I was just dealing with something temporary, not realizing that, in fact, I was being dragged into much more turbulent terrain. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because as time passed, the truth I discovered about my daughter, about my family, began to transform me in ways I never imagined. I found myself faced with choices I had to make, difficult decisions that weren't just about her, but about myself. How do you move on after a betrayal like this? How do you deal with the fact that the person you loved most was capable of destroying the trust you had in them in such a cold and irreversible way? I needed to face the truth about what was happening and understand once and for all that often the greatest challenge isn't dealing with the pain of betrayal, but with the transformation it demands of us. It's when you begin to understand that, after such a severe blow, it's not just the relationship that needs to be rebuilt, but your own life, your mindset, your worldview. I needed to change the way I saw myself and my family. The hidden truth behind it all became a painful but extremely necessary lesson. I knew that if I wanted to move forward, I would need to find a way to deal with this, to get back on my feet. This transformation process was more complex than I could have imagined. It wasn't just about forgiving or moving on. It was about understanding that in many moments of life, other people's choices, the pain they cause us, are reflections of their own struggles and not necessarily about what we did or didn't do. This was the biggest lesson I learned, that betrayal sometimes comes from a place of fear and insecurity, not pure malice. Comment below. This makes sense to me. If you've ever been through something that made you question your closest relationships and at the same time understand that the truth often appears in a painful way, but is necessary for our growth. Did you know that often a family's biggest secrets are hidden in the words left unsaid? Those small details, those uncomfortable silences, gestures that, at first glance, seem insignificant, but which, over time, reveal themselves as key pieces of a puzzle no one wants to solve. I myself never knew how much my daughter was hiding from me, and until that moment, I believed our relationship was solid, that everything we shared was transparent. But as the pieces began to fall into place, I realized there was much more behind it than I imagined. It was as if, with each passing day, I discovered that a part of my story, our story, had been left in the shadows, waiting to be revealed. And this revelation came so brutally and unexpectedly that I almost couldn't process it. It was as if, suddenly, the world I knew had become a grand stage, and everyone involved was playing roles I'd never known existed. And what began as a simple sale of my house, something I never would have imagined possible, soon led me to an abyss of discovery about who was truly behind all of my daughter's choices. The hardest part of all was realizing it wasn't just about money or material possessions. It wasn't about the house or the car, although losing those things was painful, of course. What was at stake here was something much deeper, something that directly shook the foundations of what I believed to be my life, my family. It was about trust, about the lies that had woven themselves into our relationship, about the emotional abandonment that had been disguised as pleasant words for years. And when the truth finally came out, I realized it wasn't just me who had been deceived. My daughter was also hiding something much bigger from me, something that perhaps even she herself didn't fully understand. The betrayal I felt wasn't just because of what was done, but because of the way it was hidden, the way trust was violated in such a cold and calculated way. I loved her deeply, and the pain of discovering she had something hidden from me was overwhelming. As a mother, I always thought the truth was the foundation of our relationship, that all we needed to do was be there for each other, no holds barred. But what I discovered was that, often, the truth isn't what we want to hear. It comes in a form that challenges us to see what we're not prepared to face. And the most distressing thing was realizing that, even after so many attempts to understand, to talk, to rebuild our relationship, the secrets remained, like ghosts from the past. With every step I took, with every attempt to rebuild our trust, there was always something that seemed to pull us back into the darkness, into the unknown. I was forced to understand that, no matter how hard we tried, we couldn't simply go back to the way we were before. Trust, once broken, is difficult to restore, and often the damage goes beyond what we can repair. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because as I began to delve deeper into the behind the scenes of this story, I realized that the pain of betrayal comes not only from the discovery itself, but from the consequences it brings to all the relationships surrounding it. The impact isn't isolated. It reverberates across every aspect of our lives, affecting how we see the world, how we relate to others, and even how we see ourselves. I had to deal with the internal transformation that came from this betrayal, something that demanded much more from me than simply accepting what happened. It was a long process, full of twists and turns and self-discovery, where I found myself questioning what I truly wanted for my future. Every decision we make, every word we hold back, all of it has a greater impact than we imagine. The truth that came to light forced me to rethink what it means to truly trust someone, and how it can change everything when things take an unexpected turn. But, as you can imagine, the pain of facing this truth was not in vain. It led me to places of reflection and understanding I never would have accessed otherwise. And as difficult as it was also an opportunity for transformation. The journey of dealing with family secrets is not an easy one, but it's one many of us must face sooner or later. Sometimes the people we love most are the ones who surprise us the most. And by facing these surprises, we are challenged to grow, change, and redefine what true trust is. This process of revealing and embracing pain is an essential part of our life journey. Comment below. I'm on this journey too. If you've ever found yourself in a situation where secrets were revealed and it changed everything you knew about a relationship, let's talk about it. because every experience has something to teach us. I was devastated. The pain of being betrayed by my own daughter was something I never imagined I would feel. When reality finally set in, I found myself lost, trying to process everything that had happened. How could something that seemed to be the foundation of my entire life, a relationship I believed to be solid, fall apart so quickly? The pain of being ignored, of being discarded like that, was profound, and I spent sleepless nights trying to understand where I had gone wrong. Worst of all, deep down, I knew I hadn't done anything wrong to justify it, but still, the pain and doubt were there, gnawing at me with every thought, every minute that passed. The psychological impact was immense. It wasn't just being left aside, ignored, and ultimately discarded by the person I loved most. It was the shaking of everything I believed about life, trust, and family. I found myself questioning my choices, my actions, my parenting, my dedication. Every gesture I made, every sacrifice I made to give the best for my daughter, now seemed like a hollow echo. I didn't know what was happening, but I knew there was something much deeper at play than a simple disagreement. My mind, normally capable of handling life's adversities, was paralyzed. I could no longer find the answers, and what seemed like a mistake, a failure, soon revealed itself to be something much bigger. What my daughter did wasn't just a bad choice. It was a breach of trust, a deep wound at the heart of our relationship, something that wouldn't heal easily. And most painful of all, there was no clear explanation, no words that could justify such a change in behavior, in attitude. It was like an earthquake in my life, a transformation I hadn't expected. At first I kept trying to find something, a sign, a clue that would tell me where I'd gone wrong. Could I have done something differently? Had I not realized at some point that the trust I had in her was slowly being broken? The mind begins to question everything when you find yourself in the midst of such an emotional storm. As a mother, I always tried to be understanding, trying to understand her difficulties, the challenges of life. But the truth is, at that moment, what I felt was a mixture of pain, confusion, and a profound sense of helplessness. And then, the anger of not understanding, of not being heard, of being ignored. As a mother, as a grandmother, I'd always made myself available to everyone, always been there to help. I expected the same. I expected, at the very least, to be respected. But instead, I received a deafening silence and harsh words I couldn't process, and this anger only grew as the weeks passed. I tried to calm myself, to try to understand what had happened, but with each attempt at contact, at communication, the distance grew, and the silence became even heavier. This emotional impact spread to every area of my life. It wasn't just my daughter. It wasn't just me. It affected my trust in the people around me, my faith in human relationships. What happened to my family? How could I have been deceived like this? How could I have been discarded so coldly, without any explanation? The pain was so profound that it began to affect me physically, and that's when I realized I needed to stop, breathe, and begin to understand what was happening inside me. What I was feeling couldn't be ignored. I needed to give space to this pain, and at the same time, find ways to cope with it, to understand what life was trying to teach me. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because in facing this pain, I was forced to undertake an internal journey, a transformation that wasn't easy. I began to understand that the pain wasn't just about the betrayal I had suffered, but about how I reacted to that pain. What I learned in this process of self-discovery was that often the pain we feel has a greater purpose than we imagine. It can be the starting point for a significant change in our lives, a change that makes us question our mindset, our decisions, and most importantly, what we truly want for our future. But this transformation, of course, doesn't happen overnight. It's painful, challenging, and requires you to face your own fears and insecurities. I needed to confront my own limits, understand how pain affects the way I see the world, and most importantly, how it can push us toward a place of renewal. I was beginning to understand that what seemed like a personal tragedy could become an opportunity for growth. Comment below. This resonates with me if you've ever experienced pain so profound that it made you question everything in your life, but also led to a significant transformation. How do you deal with pain and emotional difficulties when they arise? Let's talk about it. But life has a way of teaching us. After so much time consumed by that pain, I began to realize that, even amidst so much sadness, there was an important lesson to be learned. Contrary to what I initially thought, not everything we lose is the end. In fact, losses are often just the beginning of something new. I didn't want to believe that. I wanted the pain to be fleeting, for things to go back to the way they were before. But reality forced me to face that true overcoming doesn't come without effort. It comes from within, from a place where you begin to understand that, despite everything you've faced, there's still much to live for. I began to rebuild myself, little by little. It wasn't easy, and at times, it felt like the pain would never go away. There were days when I felt weak, lost, and the weight of the betrayal was still very much present. But over time, I began to realize that this process of emotional recovery was, in a way, an act of resistance, of courage. When things fall apart, as they did for me, you're forced to look at yourself and ask, what do I do now? And that's when I began to find answers that had nothing to do with trying to go back to the way things were, but with building something new. It was a difficult journey, without a doubt. I found myself in a very vulnerable place, where my certainties were constantly challenged. But little by little, I began to understand that true strength comes not from not feeling pain, but from being able to move forward despite it. I learned to find peace within myself, in moments of stillness, even when the world around me seemed chaotic. I came to understand that pain is part of our history, but it doesn't define who we are. How we react to it, how we choose to live after such a hard blow, is what truly shapes our future. Sometimes, you have to go through hardships to understand what truly matters in life, and that's exactly what happened to me. Loss, betrayal, and pain forced me to rethink what I wanted for myself. I had to learn to value myself in a way I never had before. What seemed like the end of a journey ended up teaching me the importance of putting myself first, of taking care of myself, and of learning to be kinder to myself. I realized that before expecting understanding and care from others, I needed to be able to give it to myself. I needed to be my own source of support and love. This process of transformation, of finding my own balance and strength, was a true turning point. I began to see life differently. The pain was still there, of course, but it no longer controlled me. I was learning to live with it, to accept that life is full of ups and downs, and that when we face difficult times, we have the chance to grow, to rebuild ourselves. It's not an easy task, but when you begin to realize that, in some way, this pain is shaping you for something greater, the weight begins to lift a little. I also began to understand that trust, while precious, is built over time and shouldn't be given freely. Experience taught me to be more careful, to better understand who truly deserves my time, my energy, and most importantly, my trust. But at the same time, I also learned that forgiveness isn't just a gift we give to others, but also to ourselves. Forgiving my daughter, as difficult as it was, wasn't just for her, it was for me. It was a way to free myself from what was keeping me trapped in the past, so I could finally live in the present. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because although pain has taught me many things, it has also led me to an important reflection. What does it truly mean to overcome something? Overcoming isn't about forgetting. It isn't about erasing what happened. Overcoming is about finding a new path forward, about rebuilding our lives based on the lessons pain has taught us. This can mean accepting others' mistakes, but also acknowledging our own. It can mean learning to let go, even when it seems impossible. I know that this journey of overcoming grief isn't something that happens overnight. It's an ongoing process that requires patience, understanding, and above all, courage. But I also know that when we look at pain differently, it can become a great ally, guiding us toward a stronger, more mature, and more conscious future. Comment below. This resonates with me. If you've ever gone through a process of overcoming adversity that challenged you to look at life differently. How did you deal with the pain and the changes it brought? Years later, something unexpected happened. I was trying to move on with my life, slowly rebuilding myself, when my daughter, who had left me behind without warning, appeared again. At first, I could hardly believe it was her. Time had passed, and the image I had of her, that girl I loved and cared for, was becoming increasingly distant from reality. But there she was, knocking on my door. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't even know how to react. What would it be now, I wondered. What did she want after so long, after so much pain, so much silence? She walked in, her eyes brimming with tears, and before I could say anything, she threw herself into my arms. The weight of her choices was etched on her face, and that look of regret was something I hadn't expected. "Mom, I was wrong. Forgive me. Forgive me for everything I've done." I held her, unsure of what to say. My heart was torn between the pain of the past and the surprise of that moment. How could someone who had hurt me deeply, who had left me without explanation, return now, after so long, with so many words that seemed sincere, but at the same time felt empty? But what she told me on that visit changed everything. I didn't know a simple conversation could have such a profound impact. During those years of silence, I imagined 1,000 times what she might have to say. Perhaps explanations for her choices, or perhaps something that could justify the years of abandonment. But what she revealed to me was much more than I expected. She began to tell me everything that had happened to her during the time we were apart. She spoke about the weight of the decisions she'd made, how lost she felt, the difficulties she'd faced, and how, in a way, she distanced herself because she couldn't deal with her own emotions, her guilt, and her fear. The most striking thing, however, was when she told me she never imagined how deeply her choices would affect our relationship. "I didn't know how much I would hurt you. I thought that by walking away I was doing what was best for myself, but now I see that I only caused pain. I didn't know how to deal with my own mistakes, and deep down, I thought I would spare you that pain, without realizing that was the biggest lie I could tell myself." She was there, telling me a truth I never imagined I would hear, that in reality, the pain she caused me also consumed her, in a way she hadn't known how to handle. I was silent for a moment, taking it all in. My daughter, whom I had blamed for so long, whom I had seen as distant, was now revealing to me a side of herself I hadn't known, someone deeply remorseful, someone trying to find redemption. Her words were heavy, but at the same time, they were charged with something I hadn't expected: vulnerability. She was no longer there to defend herself or justify her choices. She was there to expose herself, to open up, to somehow try to rebuild what we had lost. What happened on that visit was a turning point. I realized that even after everything we'd been through, there was room for something new, something that could lead us to a place of healing. But at the same time, I knew it would take more than just words. It would take time, actions, and above all, inner work from each of us. The impact of her words left me in a state of deep reflection. The pain of betrayal was still there, but something deep inside me told me that perhaps this was the chance to rebuild what seemed irreparable. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because, although her visit touched me deeply, it also made me think about the power of forgiveness and reconciliation. Sometimes we cling so tightly to the pain and mistakes of the past that we forget to look to what the future may still hold. What truly matters when rebuilding a relationship is the genuine desire on both sides to heal the wounds and move forward. And to do so, we must face the consequences of the choices made, with courage and honesty. This experience made me understand that forgiveness is not something we do just for others, but also for ourselves. Comment below: this resonates with me if you've ever experienced something that, after a long time, led to an unexpected reconciliation and made you rethink the power of forgiveness and transformation in relationships. How do you deal with people who hurt you in the past? What happened after you made room for healing? What I've learned is that life doesn't always go the way we expect. There are times when everything seems to be in the right place, and then, out of nowhere, everything changes. Life turns upside down, and pain appears where we least expect it. But like everything in life, there's always a chance to start over, to forgive, and to move on. Even when the wounds seem too deep to heal, even when the betrayal seems irreparable, the important thing is not to lose our essence, who we truly are deep down. No matter how much life's circumstances challenge us, no matter how much the people around us may hurt us, our essence, our truth, is the one thing we should never abandon. Throughout this process, I was challenged in ways I never imagined, but I also learned something that is perhaps the most important lesson. True strength comes from within. It's not about what others do to us, but about how we choose to react, how we decide to grow and transform our pain into learning. Sometimes we feel lost, unsure of where to go, but it's in these moments that we find the opportunity to rewrite our story. Life presents us with challenges, but it's how we choose to face them that defines who we are. Never let the actions of others define your happiness. Our happiness comes from within and doesn't depend on what others do to us. That moment of reunion with my daughter taught me a lot about forgiveness, but also about the importance of understanding ourselves and, when necessary, moving forward, even with a broken heart. Forgiving doesn't mean forgetting or erasing the pain. It means choosing not to let that pain consume us. It means understanding that the path to healing involves accepting that we are all human and we all make mistakes. And by forgiving, we are, in a way, freeing ourselves, allowing ourselves to grow beyond the circumstances that hurt us. And as the journey of forgiveness and transformation continues, I know that what matters is what we do with what we experience, how we respond to challenges, how we choose to learn from them, and above all, how we choose to move forward. Every step we take, no matter how small, leads us to a new version of ourselves, stronger, wiser, more capable of handling what lies ahead. Now, I want to hear from you. What have you learned from the challenges you've faced in your life? Could you forgive someone who betrayed you in the same way? What does it mean to you to move on after great pain? Comment below. This resonates with me. If you've also experienced something that challenged you to grow, forgive, and find a new path, I'd love to hear your thoughts and learn how you dealt with your own challenges. If you've made it this far, I want to thank you for sticking with me until the end. I truly hope everything I shared touched your heart and that you found something valuable in this video. If this content resonated with you, leave me a comment saying, "I'm with you until the end," so I know you were with me on this journey. And if you somehow felt this video brought something important to your life, a simple like goes a long way in helping me continue bringing this kind of message to more people. Now, if you'd like to delve deeper into this topic of transformation, forgiveness, and overcoming, there's a video right here that complements everything we've discussed today. Click on it and stay with me there. Let's go on this journey together. See you soon.